do you see this? Do you see that lion? Do you see that? Like the whole time I was freaking out, and Christopher was like, he's like, okay, like you had fun. I know you had a lot of fun.
Oh, it was
too.
an incredible
But here
moment.
I'd be like, this is so cool. This is so cool. Like every 5 seconds. But I think especially when we flew right over the zebra.
Hello and welcome to the World Wide Honeymoon Travel Podcast, the podcast that talks about all things couples travel, including destinations, tips, advice, and more. I'm Chris.
I'm Kat.
And this is episode number 213.
Yes. And we are celebrating.
We are 4 years old.
Our 4-year anniversary of the podcast.
Oh, I didn't think of it as an anniversary. I thought of it as a birthday.
Birthday, anniversary, whatever you want to call it.
We're getting out of the toddler phase.
Yeah.
We are firmly entering the
fours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The young child phase
Yeah.
of the podcast stage.
It's true.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
When we started recording this,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts?
Recording this episode, like as in 2 seconds ago.
When we started recording this podcast, what were your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, this is definitely going to be a bit of a reflective episode where we do kind of talk about where we were versus now and some differences. We're basically going to re-answer the questions that we kind of answered back when we first started this.
Episode 1.
Episode 1.
16 minutes.
Yeah.
One mic.
No, we had 2 mics.
No, we had one microphone at that point.
No.
Yeah, we did.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We had 2 mics.
No, we didn't.
Okay,
we
well, I
were
don't
recording
remember.
off of one microphone, and we used to record in a at the dining room table back in the day.
We did used to record at the dining room table. It turns out, for acoustics, that is a terrible way to record because it took me so much longer to edit back in those days because your voice would echo into my microphone because it would bounce off the wall.
Into the single microphone that we had.
No, Christopher, we had 2 microphones.
I do not remember that.
We had 2 microphones. I swear. Because I think I got one of these mics for Christmas and one you gave me when I quit my job before we started this podcast.
Yeah, but why would I have gotten you one for... You know what? We had
2 microphones.
We'll take the average and say that we were operating with 1.5 microphones.
Maybe you were.
Glass half full sort of situation.
Yeah. But I remember we would sit across the table from each other and record, and our mics, like our voices would bounce off the wall and into the other person's microphone. And so I would have to take out, whenever someone wasn't speaking, take out all of their recorded parts.
You know what? Now that you say this, I'd like to retract my statements. We had 2 microphones.
How bizarre. But, yeah, so that's how we used to record. And then we were like, you know what? We have this very thick curtain in our extra bedroom, aka office, aka now recording studio, and lots of soft furniture that kind of absorbs the sound. So now we kind of record in here and set up our recording studio.
Fully cushioned room.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's for when Christopher, he just like sleepwalks a bit. He can just walk into the... No, just kidding.
You know, it happened one time, and I'm never going to live it down.
Oh, yeah. That was terrifying. Christopher did sleepwalk one time, and I was in the bathroom, and I heard something, and Christopher couldn't even form sentences because he was sleepwalking. Like, he looked like he wasn't there. And you walked in, and I slammed the door in your face because it freaked me out. And then you came to, and you were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "What? Are you okay?"
You know what the one thing you're not supposed to do to someone who's sleepwalking is? Wake them up. What did you do? Slam a door in my face, make a very loud noise, startle me. All of a sudden, I have no idea why I'm out of bed. I freak out. It was terrible.
Okay.
It was. Yeah. So 4 years later, yeah.
It's crazy because when we started this podcast, we were 6 months married. So we were genuinely newlyweds. So this podcast is almost as old as our marriage. So, yeah.
It's touching.
It is touching. Look at us.
Do you have a highlight from
this
the
week?
past 48 hours?
Well, yeah, we recorded in the last episode. We were all dressed up, about to go out to dinner. Made quite an effort for that. It was a good time. And then as soon as we got our appetizers and we're chowing down on that,
20 minutes into it.
20 minutes into dinner, the fire alarms went off, and the restaurant below the restaurant we were in had like a grill fire or something. And so we had to evacuate, and we ended up getting pizza because we didn't get to really eat. So that was our experience going to this restaurant. But hopefully we can get back in at some point because it's really hard to get reservations for that.
Yeah.
Good times.
It was.
Yeah.
My highlight was the birthday party we attended before our 20-minute dinner.
Our 20-minute dinner. I just thought it was funny because like nobody reacted. The fire alarm went off. Nobody reacts. All right. Then all of a sudden we've got.
Well, I mean.
There was one girl that was starting to freak out, and everyone else was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Christopher was like, oh, there's like some embers because it's a glass roof. And Christopher was like, oh, it's really smoky out there, and there's like embers. And I'm still sitting there like, whatever. It looks fine. Everything seems okay. Nobody's really reacting. Mind you, with a couple of antidepressants and a drink or two, it'll make you not worry about anything. So I'm just like chill. And then finally the people working there were like, hey guys, we have to evacuate. And then that's when we all just like shuffled out of the restaurant. But like,
yeah, it was a good time.
It was a good time.
The birthday party beforehand was very nice.
The birthday party was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I had a good time there. Yeah. So I guess we can just talk about today's episode. So like we said, the World Wide Honeymoon podcast is turning 4.
Mm-hmm. The World Wide Honeymoon Travel podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are reintroducing ourselves using episode 1 as a guide.
Yeah.
So in episode 1, we kind of posed some questions to each other, and we each answered those.
We each answered them.
Yikes. And we're going to do the same today, just as kind of a reflective, like where we were, where we are now.
Yeah, if you guys want to, you can go back and listen to episode 1. It's not our best episode, but we certainly tried. We've learned a lot since then, so.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
No, I like it too. It's fine. It's just not our best.
The first question is, what is the World Wide Honeymoon travel podcast about?
Well, I know when we first started, again, we were newlyweds. So we were talking about newlyweds navigating the world of couples travel. And we had interviews from other couples travelers. We did destination guides, that sort of thing. And as the podcast has grown and expanded, first of all, the interviews never did that well.
Isn't that odd?
It is odd. So we just stopped doing that, and we really like it just being the two of us. Also, trying to find interviews,
it makes it a lot easier,
is much more difficult. So it's kind of nice to not have to do that. But yeah, like I mean, who knows? Are we still considered newlyweds almost 5 years into marriage? But we still treat every trip like it's a honeymoon-esque trip. We do romantic destinations, beautiful hotels, fun things. And we are very much, for the most part, independent travelers. Like, we kind of plan things ourselves, except for things like safaris and stuff. We pretty much do everything ourselves, including our own honeymoon. That was our 3 weeks trip to Southeast Asia. We kind of planned all of that ourselves and did all of it. So we're sort of empowering others to do the same. And yeah, I think nowadays we sometimes have debates that we talk about, couples travel topics. We still do our destination guides. And then during the pandemic, we did a lot of travel from home and different things like that. And we also do a lot of episodes that people request. Our next episode is going to be a start of a series that we'll get into next episode because of a request that we got. But I think for the most part, we still stick to, hey, it's a travel podcast, particularly for couples. I mean, there's lots of great information in there that's not just for couples as well. But yeah, do you have any thoughts or reflections about the World Wide Honeymoon Travel podcast?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I was thinking back to as well that you mentioned was the fact that we had maybe 10 interviews, like probably right around there. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's less about that now, I think. I think it's been far more of like an intimate journey of like the two of us. Mm-hmm. as opposed to kind of like a broader survey of what couples travel could be.
That's very true, because we kind of started it being like, oh, I think maybe every other episode we'll do just the two of us, and every other episode we will do an interview. And when we saw that that wasn't doing as well, and that our episodes just the two of us were, we kind of went from being sort of talking to other couples in the podcast to just us talking with you guys.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that makes sense to me too, with like podcasts that I listen to or like shows that I'll tune into or something like that. It's always like I'm tuning in because of that person, not because of who that person can bring to the table, if that makes sense.
And there are podcasts where they do have guests like that, and people like to go and listen to that, and that's great. It just didn't work for us, so
yeah,
we evolved.
Wasn't us.
Happens when you have 4 years of travel podcasting under your belt, as well as a pandemic.
What?
You just kind of are forced to evolve. And,
grow
over
okay,
time.
got it. Okay, I was not sure where you were going with that, so fair enough.
Who knows?
Alrighty. Yeah, I wrote down, like, when I was trying to think about what the World Wide Honeymoon Travel Podcast is about, I wrote down the recognition and the appreciation for the fact that the honeymoon, quote unquote, never has to end. Mm-hmm. And I think that you were talking about that earlier too, with like treating each trip not just as a like a getaway or like we have to use up vacation days or something like that, but like as a chance to experience something new together, to reconnect, to spend time together, that sort of thing. The world is an incredibly romantic and beautiful place. Mm-hmm. There's the aspect of quality over quantity. I think that in the beginning we were, at least I was, more about the number of countries or the number of places or what have you to see. The
countries we can scratch off our scratch-off map.
Yeah, and now I think I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that, like, look, there's other people out there that are full-time travelers, and that's great, but we are not. Yeah. So, I know that I said this like a few episodes ago, but there's that line, like, there's more to see than can ever be seen, more to do than can ever be done. I think I've really kind of come to terms with that it's far more about quality over quantity for me now.
Yeah. And I think that I kind of like the way that this works for us. Like, we do embrace the amount of times we get to travel together. And I think we do travel more than a lot of people do, but, I don't know. It's kind of nice to have a home base and get work done, then you get to enjoy your travels. So that kind of works well for us.
Yeah. And I think if I were going to summarize kind of at least my feelings about the podcast, it's that it's just that inspiration to continue to make memories, experience the world with the one you love. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I mean, there are certainly benefits to like eating pizza, watching a movie, staying in, like just chilling on the couch, right? But there's also
literally what we did last night.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's absolutely the benefit to that aspect of a relationship or a marriage or what have you, but there's also the benefit to experiencing something new. And like I know that there's a few times where I've seen something and like I can feel myself smiling and my eyes are wide and I look over and I see you're doing the same thing and I'm like, oh, core memory.
And core memory unlocked.
Yeah, it's really, really special. So
yeah, and I think it helps. Like, I feel like we've grown a lot as a couple through travel together.
Yes.
Just with our travel styles, or navigating different places that we're unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
Cultural differences. You learn a lot through travel, and together as a couple, you learn a lot about each other and about the world together.
Yeah.
So that makes it's a nice little bonding experience as well.
Agreed.
In that regard.
So the second question, we talked about our background and our travel history. So thinking back to, we recorded in late February of 2019. Mm-hmm. My background and travel history at that point was that prior to the World Wide Honeymoon Travel Podcast, I had been to 3 continents, North America, Africa, and Asia, because we had just gotten home from our honeymoon.
Oh, yeah, you'd never been to Europe.
I had never been to Europe at that point. I had been to 9 countries, and I had been to 20 U.S. states. So I was tallying it all up today. I have now been to 5 different continents. So I added Europe and I added South America. I've been to 24 countries. So in the past approximately 4 years, I've added 15 countries, which is pretty...
Do you know which ones they are?
Pretty eye-opening. I know the 9 that I had been to. So... Yeah, I mean, do you want me to list off the 15?
No.
Is this I could
right
do
now,
it right
at the top of your
now.
head.
But and then I've now been to 25 states. So I've added 2 continents, I've added 15 countries, and I've added 5 US states, which is pretty cool. Do you want to go through your stats and then we can kind of talk about like our background?
Sure.
Or like how our travel has changed or what have you?
Sure. I had been to 4 continents before February of 2019 when we first recorded the podcast. I had been to Europe, North America, Asia, and Africa. And then I added South America in 2019. I had been to 28 countries.
That is wild.
And then that's because, well, and I can talk more about that in my background in a minute. And then I've been to 35, so I've only added 7 countries since then, because when we've traveled together, some of them are countries I'd already been to, but again, tons of fun to go back again and to see it through someone else's eyes. I think that's always really special. So I love doing that. And then states, I had been to 21 states, and I have added 8 new states, and I have 29 states now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how would you, not necessarily background, but knowing kind of your approach to travel in February of 2019 versus now, how has it changed?
I do think that I was very much cram as much as possible into a trip if I could.
Okay.
And I still like to see a lot, but I think that sometimes we'll slow it down. Like when we went to Costa Rica and we had, we slowed it down at the coffee farm. We hung out there for a few days and, Playa Nicuesa, we were there for a few days, really just soaking it all in. So that's a lot of fun. Also, my travel style, hadn't even thought to start my second blog.
Yeah.
So now I make a lot of repeat trips to France for that. So it's about visiting a country that I know and love and seeing more places of it to write about it. So that's another thing. But I've slowed down a little bit. Still really love to get out and explore and do things. But make sure that there's time built in for a little bit of leisure time and or treat yourself moments, whether you want to get a massage or something like that, or just to wander.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
So I wrote down that I have really, really come to love nature-based / off-the-grid trips. I think
that started in 2019 when we went to the Amazon.
It did.
Yeah.
I put down in parentheses, like, wear your hiking boots on the plane type of trips.
Gosh, I hate wearing my hiking boots on the plane.
Especially because they're normally longer flights, and those are not, like, the most comfortable... It's not the most comfortable footwear to be flying that long, but some of the best trips that we have taken are hiking boots on the plane sort of trips. Like I love that aspect of travel. I have also realized that as I've entered my early 30s, I also have an appreciation more for the, I'll say like the finer things travel, like the food and wine sort of travel. I've really enjoyed that.
The nicer hotels.
Well, and I also wrote down, like, I think one of my mindsets has changed from, I used to just approach like, look, a room is a room, like I just need a bed, to kind of like a little oasis in an otherwise unfamiliar area can be really, really nice.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean it necessarily needs to be a 5-star resort.
No.
I think
something more than a bed.
Well, and we've gotten really into staying in boutique hotels where it's not necessarily expensive to do that. We've stayed in some lovely, smaller sort of bed and breakfasty boutique hotels, but you're right. Like it's a little bit, it's unique and it's fun and a little bit of an oasis in the midst of a lot of unfamiliar territory.
Yeah. So that is very nice. I was going to say something else too, and then when you said that, I forgot it. What was
we
I going
stay
to
a
say?
lot just in the outdoors, especially with a lot of three-walled situations.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, whether
do.
that is the Amazon three-walled lodge or staying in like a very kind of just like basically a netted tent, like a screen tent in Uganda, at Queen Elizabeth National Park, and and Plain Iguesa, where it was pretty much an open air cabin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I will say that I have continued to do, I didn't write this down, but I was thinking about it as I was chatting here, is that I have in the past tried to read a book about the place, whether it's like straight up nonfiction, whether it's historical fiction, something like that, but like that kind of gives me a background to appreciate the place a bit more. And I have done that for the vast majority of our trips ever since. And for me, it just gives me like a heightened sense of appreciation for the area.
That's cool. Yeah. And I also want to say, like, the background, like our travel background too, like, yeah, I'd studied abroad in France. So I lived in France for about 5-6 months. And that's kind of where I got started, where I got the travel bug. Because when I was studying abroad, I traveled all over Europe, that sort of thing. But since then, in February 2019, I had just left my full-time job. So this is my full-time job now, is the World Wide Honeymoon travel podcast, the blog, and France Voyager blog. And when this podcast was first started, I just left my job a few months ago. I had just started making a little bit of money on World Wide Honeymoon because I didn't want to quit my job until I knew that I could make money off of it. And now I have built 2 successful blogs.
An empire.
Not an empire, but like this is doing well. This podcast is doing well. We have lots of great listeners. Very well. Thank you so much for the thousands of downloads that we now get a month. The 2 blogs, I have been able to build 2 great blogs, both between World Wide Honeymoon, couples travel, that does really well, and now France Voyager, that I started about, a year and a half ago?
Yes. That
is also taking off and doing really well. So I'm very, very thankful for that. I'm thankful to be able to fund our travels and things like that, and make more than I did when I was working in public accounting, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And stuff that I just did not know was possible right away. But thank you for that, Christopher, because Christopher really believed in me during all of this.
De nada, mi amor.
Okay. But yeah, I think it's cool to see like where we are.
I agree.
From the time we started this podcast to now. And
watching you like over the past few years has just been incredible.
Oh,
it really has. Like you've learned an entirely new skill set.
Yes.
You run your own business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like you never like sit back on your laurels either. You're always like, okay, like I'm building, like it's really, really exciting, and it's really inspiring to watch.
And it's
so
crazy that when thank you, you're welcome. But in 2019, I mean, France Voyager wasn't even an idea in my head. So it was 2020, at the end of 2020, 2021. No, it was the end of 2021, is when France Voyager popped up and has become another little passion project that is now doing really well. And I'm really proud of how far we've come, both in travel and just like, with this area of our life as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Thanks to you guys too.
Yeah.
Yeah. We couldn't do this without you, honestly, literally.
The next question is, so this is a little different. So in the first episode, we talked about what was our first wow travel moment. And by that, we were describing it as that first moment that like took your breath away, right? What was your first wow travel moment? And then what was your most recent wow travel moment?
Yes. So if you go back and listen to episode 1, my very first wow travel moment, it was studying abroad. And I'm like, my first big moment was where I was studying abroad in this town called Grenoble, France. It's a smaller city in the Alps in France. Very beautiful. The city is surrounded by mountains, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I remember staring out the windows of a classroom, and there were snow-capped mountains everywhere. It was absolutely gorgeous, and being like, I can't believe I'm here, especially being a person that came from a small town in Kentucky of about 700 people, to be kind of halfway across the world somewhere, living in a different area, and learning that culture and cuisine, and going to school and all of that stuff was crazy. So yeah, that was definitely a wow, I'm so excited I'm here moment. My now recent, so are we going to do our first and then our wows?
Nope. Go for your most
Okay.
recent now.
My most recent wow travel moment, and we talk about things that have left us breathless. If we're going literal, it was climbing up Gros Piton in St. Lucia. Literally, like breathless moment. But in actuality, I think the most recent one was watching the sunset from our villa in Soufriere in St. Lucia. So we stayed at Stonefield Villa Resort, and we saw the first night this beautiful sunset. We hung out in the hammock and our private plunge pool in this amazing villa, and I would say that was probably our most recent wow moment together, at least for me. Yeah. But I also think just a little sneak one in here, the Alsace Christmas markets, particularly Strasbourg, was really cool too.
Nice.
Yeah.
My first wow travel moment, I talked about a family trip that we had taken when I was in my early teens, and it was to Alaska. And my wow travel moment was seeing a mother grizzly with her cubs in Denali National Park. That was just so cool, right? Like it was the first time that I had seen something like that when it wasn't in a zoo. Right? Like
Yeah.
it was something where I wasn't walking up to an enclosure.
It was wild.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like it wasn't that I was walking up to an enclosure and I'm like, yes, this is where the grizzly bears are. And there they are in the back. It was just like driving around and being like, oh my gosh, there's a grizzly bear. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty cool. My most recent wow travel moment was also a sunset. It was not the one in St. Lucia though. It was the one in Kenya. It was our very last night in
the Masai Mara.
Yes. Very last night in the Masai Mara. And we were our guide had stopped and he had like packed like a little sundowner for us. And I'm having a beer and we're watching the sunset, and like to our left there are 3 giraffes. And then turn a little bit and there's a nice herd of zebra. And then turn a little bit more and there's a family of hyenas. And I remember just looking around and being like, this is otherworldly, right? Like easily the coolest beer of my lifetime.
Yeah.
And also just one of those moments that not only is just like incredibly contemplative and reflective in the moment, but also one of those very humbling travel moments where you're like, man, like I am a speck.
Yeah.
I am such a tiny little part of this greater thing, which was pretty awesome.
So with that being said, I honestly thought that would be your favorite travel moment. But now I think I know what your favorite travel moment is. Do you want to answer that?
Sure. So our next question was, what is our top travel moment or our favorite travel moment?
And start with the one that you did in 2019 when we recorded.
Yes. So in
2019,
I talked about a game drive that we had on safari in the Timbavati Game Reserve in South Africa. And our guide had seen a couple of elephants and he drove our rover up and just parked it. And then pretty soon all of a herd of elephants was just kind of like surrounding us and not paying us really any attention, just kind of walking up and instead of like being able to walk through the vehicle, they would just kind of go to the side and then kind of continue their path. And it was really neat to just be surrounded by these elephants and just kind of be one of the herd. So that was really, really neat. My favorite travel moment, and this is so hard because I really kind of keyed in on moment, right? So not my favorite experience, but my favorite moment, because I think those are 2 different things for me. Okay. My favorite travel moment was the hour that we got to spend time with the mountain gorillas in...
That's what I guessed.
In Bwindi Impenetrable Forest in Uganda. there were two things that I remember, or three things rather, that I remember very specifically that I'm just like, this is something I'm never going to forget. There was a mother nursing her baby who was, I mean, less than a month
only
old.
3 weeks old. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was something that it just kind of really caused that link between humans and gorillas there, right? There was also the babies playing all around us. And it was kind of like reminiscent of like watching our nephews play or watching any kids play with each other, right? They're all roughhousing.
The adults looked exhausted.
Yes.
And the babies were everywhere.
I mean, they were just having a blast. And then the other thing that I will always remember is there was a little baby and he was up in a tree and he was looking down and the silverback was walking by and the baby started beating his chest, like kind of like taunting, like take that, Dad.
Yeah.
And the silverback just reached out his hand and snapped this tiny tree in half. And you just see this tree falling over with this baby up at the top. And the baby was absolutely fine. But
Dad was like, not today, son.
Yeah, it was just such a neat hour. Like the hour flew by.
Yeah, it really did.
But it was just so immersive too, because we would kind of not set up shop, but we would stop and like start taking pictures or looking at them in one area. And then the babies would get really curious and kind of get closer and we would try to back up because you're not supposed to get too close to them. But it was just incredibly immersive to see all of the mountain gorillas. So that is my favorite travel moment. Why don't you talk about yours from episode 1 and then what if that is still your favorite travel moment or if you have a new one?
I feel like I listed a couple from South Africa, and I know the first one was when we got to Johannesburg and we'd spent a day there, and then we split a bottle of wine just sitting there listening to the evening sounds and the animals, all the birds and crickets and different things, and just being like, oh my gosh, we're here, we're in Africa, we've never been to this continent before, we're in a whole new place, and we were just so excited, anticipating the rest of the trip. So I remember being excited about that. But I also liked the one that I really mentioned was on safari, when at night or for sunset they would do these sundowners, so it's like a little cocktail at sunset, and I remember we would watch the sunset standing just around the vehicle, hanging out and watching wildlife and the stars come out. And it was absolutely magical doing that. So that was my original favorite travel moment when we first started recording. Since then, there have been a lot of great ones. And I think that my absolute favorite one has been particularly flying over zebra in the Masai Mara in a hot air balloon. But I think that whole 45-minute journey was amazing. I mean, there were videos we filmed of it, and the whole time I'm like, Christopher, this is so cool. This is so cool. Do you see this? Do you see that lion? Do you see that? Like the whole time I was freaking out, and Christopher was like, he's like, okay. Like, you had fun. I know you had a lot of fun,
it was
too.
an incredible
But here
moment.
I'd be like, this is so cool. This is so cool. Like every 5 seconds. But I think especially when we flew right over the zebra, that was just an epic moment. But because I can't just list one thing, a couple of honorable mentions before Christopher gets upset, is seeing the jaguars in the Amazon. That was epic.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty sweet.
And then the other one was the whole lion, leopard, elephant thing in the Masai Mara, where this leopard...
the standoff.
Yeah, there was a whole standoff. There was a leopard. She had was it a badger or mongoose?
It was a mongoose.
She was trying to eat that. She had to chase off some jackals. Then she finally put her kill in the tree, started eating. Then we saw her freak out and like go to the very top of the tree. And then we see this female lion circling the tree who's like hoping for the mongoose to fall down. And she's hissing at the lion. And
the leopard, yeah.
Yeah, the leopard is hissing at the lion. The lion finally kind of stomps off. There's a herd of elephants. Then the elephants are like freaking out because there's a lion close by. And they're like stamping their feet and, making noise at her and everything like that. And then she kept circling the tree, and it was a standoff that was maybe about an hour and a half we stayed there.
That was almost our entire game drive.
But it was so action-packed. It was so cool. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but it seems like a lot of wildlife memories are some great moments here, as well as our travels in Africa are fantastic. We've been to
Yeah.
Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa, and those have just been epic trips, worth every, time, money, everything that we've gotten to spend there. So
Yeah.
absolutely lovely. We're going back to South Africa actually with my parents later this year, and I'm so excited because again, I love to travel with people where they're seeing it for the first time, and you just getting to watch them experience it makes it really exciting too. So I'm really pumped for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the last question we asked each other in the very first episode was, what is your top travel destination? So money isn't an option, or money isn't an issue.
Yeah.
Time off isn't an issue. What have you? Where are you going? And what did you say after the first episode, and has it changed?
The first episode I said Morocco, and we still haven't been. So it's up there for me. I really want to go spend the night under the desert stars and to go to Fez and Marrakesh and stay in the riads and see the spice markets and just the culture and the cuisine and everything just sounds amazing. Definitely still want to go there. But I'd say right now at the top of my list is Japan.
And
money were no object. We'd
why
be
did-
flying business if money were no object.
There you go.
But
Why did that change?
I don't know. I just feel like Japan just kind of scooched up there a little bit for me. I think that's like, I don't know. The food. I really want to go to Tokyo.
The way that you said that, it like reminded me, or it like I was envisioning like Japan kind of like being like, oops, can I squeeze past you there?
Oh, can I squeeze
Oh.
right past you? The Midwestern, excuse me.
And there it is.
And there it is. The cherry blossoms. Maybe it's because I want to go see that monkey park where the monkeys hang out in the hot springs. The onsens, the temples, just the beauty everywhere in the cities. And I mean, they have vending machines for everything. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it would be a really fun place to explore. Not that Morocco is not like Morocco's like right there.
Uh-huh.
I still really want to go, but I think Japan might be my top one right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My top one from episode 1 was Uganda for a gorilla trek.
Yeah.
How freaking sweet is that?
I'm telling you, it's like you're manifesting.
You gotta manifest.
You gotta manifest. You gotta say it out loud. We will get to Morocco eventually.
My top one, and this like isn't even really fair, and maybe I need to be less vocal in our trip choices because
My, how the turntables have turned.
No, I would say we're pretty well balanced when we're like thinking of trips. Wouldn't you? Maybe
Sure.
not.
Well, we're planning the Galapagos with your friends and stuff. I'm excited for it, but that's your trip.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So my top travel destination is the Galapagos Islands.
See.
No
See?
joke.
Okay, you've had both Uganda, and now we're actively planning a trip to the Galapagos in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And I would like to go to Morocco and Japan, neither of which have happened yet. I'm just saying.
Let's make it happen then.
Okay.
You got to put these plans into action. You can't always wait for me to plan all of our trips.
Okay.
But yeah, Galapagos for me. And
Yeah.
it kind of checks all the boxes, right? Like it is
There's animals.
it's a hiking boots on the plane type of trip.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to it. I think that's it. I think those were kind of the 5 questions that we asked in episode 1.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities still,
Yeah.
but I will say also a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So we will we'll have to do this again
In 4 more years.
in 4 more
Check
years.
back in.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to know more about you guys as well. If you want to tell us about your most recent wild travel moments, your favorite travel moments, your top destinations, even your backgrounds and travel and stuff, let us know. You can always reach us on WW Honeymoon on Twitter, World Wide Honeymoon on Instagram, or you can email kat@worldwidehoneymoon.com. But thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to rate and review our podcast. It takes less than a few minutes and really helps other people find us. Also, if you're enjoying this awesome free information on both the blog and podcast, when you're booking your next trip, head over to worldwidehoneymoon.com/resources and use the links provided. We earn a small commission at no cost to you when you book through these links, And these are all brands and companies we know, love, and use, like Skyscanner for finding the best flight prices, World Nomads for the best travel insurance, TripAdvisor for hotel bookings and reviews, and even Amazon for all of your travel purchases.
Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Wherever you are, wherever you go, remember to make every day a worldwide honeymoon.